During today's news conference, the district attorney defended the police and blamed Andrew Brown Jr. for the shooting that killed him. BNC Chief Legal Correspondent Dr. Laura McNeil is with me now to talk about this. Good afternoon, Dr. Laura, joining us. You've been covering this since we found out that information today. Just first off, your reaction to what the DA said today.
Yeah, so Brittany, I had a very strong reaction to what the DA said, and it's mostly because I didn't feel the sense of transparency that we were all hoping for. He still won't officially release the body cam footage, and I want to know if there's nothing to hide, release the information. So there was feelings of outrage, disappointment, and and a lot of people say, maybe you're overreacting, but there's something he said in particular that struck me so much that I wrote it down. He said there was no journalistic need to release the footage. How could there not be any journalistic need to release the footage? And I was having this conversation in one of the social media worlds, as we say, with Robert Rusley Blanche, and he made a really good point. He said that, how do we know they weren't using racial slurs? What happened after the body, right? After the body, meaning was retrieved from the car, why are we not seeing any of that? They said that his body was lifeless and that they rendered medical care, but did they really render care? Did they try to save his life? Well, we don't know because they won't release the footage.
So without that being released, is there something that this family can do later to request to see all of the video? Because he said that it's not his job to release it to everyone. Yes,
and so what he's doing is he's hiding behind this very unique North Carolina statute that essentially says it's not a public record. And so they'll have to petition the same judge yet again, asking for a release of this video so that the family can really know, and the community there in Elizabeth City, what really happened to Andrew Brown Jr. Not just what the little pieces that they edited and showed us, but what happened leading up to it, what happened after the fact. We don't know that. And so now it's in the hands of a judge, and based on the fact that the judge was not willing to release the footage earlier, I'm not so sure he'd do it now.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that this case was not so clear-cut as George Floyd and Eric Garner. I remember you mentioning that earlier. And in this case, what could he have done, I guess, differently legally that would have given him the opportunity to survive this, wherein the DA says that, oh, he was using his car as a weapon?
Yeah, so essentially, and that's questionable, because I looked at the video, we all saw the video, depending on what angle, if you see that someone is trying to pull off, the police officers were trying to stop him. There's a famous case, Tennessee versus Gardner, and essentially what it says is you cannot pursue a subject that's fleeing unless they pose a danger. Well, you could make the argument, Brittany, that these officers placed themselves in danger, harm's way. You see he's trying to flee, and you're going to move yourself and try to stop a moving car? What he could have done differently, to be quite honest, is he could have tried to run. And the reason I say that, and I say it cautiously, is that they can't use deadly force. If you're running with your hands up, so they can't say, oh, you have a weapon, they wouldn't have been justified in using the level of force they did. But hiding under this, the car was being used as a deadly weapon to justify these officers' behaviors. That's what's problematic about this, but again, I say it cautiously because we don't have the whole picture. The law says based on the totality of the circumstances. That's what the Constitution says, but yet this DA is depriving us of just that. We can't see the totality of the circumstances because all we have are bits and pieces of what he chose to release to the public.
And the DA said today, he said that, you'd have to return to the ballot box in order to make changes if you don't like it. So, what can this family do in this case if he's saying that's the only thing that could happen because he's not losing his job at this moment?
They can, but what they can do is they still can request that a special prosecutor come in and take another look-see at this case. They also can reach out to the Department of Justice Division of Civil Rights. We've seen them very active in these types of police-involved shootings, with their investigations in Minneapolis PD, Louisville PD. They can come in and say, we're going to take another look with a neutral, different set of impartial eyes and see if they come to the same result. And so if I were the family or working on that legal team, I would focus on the Department of Justice as well as really putting the pressure on for a special prosecutor.
Wow. I mean, and you just think about that because, oftentimes when we hear these things, some people think it may be an end all be all, but there's the opportunity for something to still happen.
There is, and I want to encourage the Brown family just because I can only imagine what they must be thinking. You know, they've one moment their family member's alive, the next moment he's lying in the street dead, and feeling like the people that are supposed to protect and serve are not doing that. I mean, to be honest, Brittany, this DA, he sounded like a defense attorney for the police officers, which is why we always call for a special prosecutor, because these district attorneys work closely with these police officers, often having dinner at their homes. They work on cases together. That's not someone I want investigating a police-involved shooting.
Now, would that be the opportunity for other agencies to step in and investigate the fact of that close relationship?
Yes, but again, they have to step in. So the question is, will the State Department of Justice for North Carolina step in and see whether or not there was, you know, foul play, to be quite honest, if there was bias towards those police officers? Because even the way that the DA in this particular press conference, the word choice he used, he was doing what they often do, making the victim, right, the villain. And so spending a lot of time talking about his criminal record. That has nothing to do with whether or not these police officers used excessive force. It's yet again another scapegoat, another smokescreen to take attention away from holding police officers accountable. And I stand on this strongly, Brittany, and saying, if you have nothing to hide, release all the evidence.
Yeah, and you know, in the Hutchinson case, people are talking about that today, and a different case where it's not a black man involved and a white man walks away in those cases. So how do we, you know, feel comfortable knowing that those situations are handled in that way, and then you have this one in particular is called Justified?
That's a really good point, and we've all seen these videos online of white suspects in a car with a gun. Andrew Brown Jr. didn't have a gun, with a gun, and fleeing from the police, not being shot, safely apprehended. We saw Kyle Rittenhouse walking around with a semi-automatic weapon in Kenosha, Wisconsin, not harmed in any way. And so, you know, it's very natural for our men to run because they have a reason to be afraid, because they know that there's going to be a higher level of force used against them and they might lose their lives. And so my response to that is, the only way we can change this is we have to change the police officers. We have to change law enforcement, and not just qualified immunity, holding them accountable. We need to root out police officers that should not be police officers. We need a better screening process. We need to look at their social media accounts on a regular basis. Are they following these right-wing extremist, white supremacist groups? Like, we need to do a better job screening who we entrust to protect and serve. Yeah. Because if not, we're going to have the same situation
over and over again. All right, Chief Legal Correspondent Dr. Laura McNeil, always bringing us, weighing in on the good information that we need each and every day. Appreciate it, Dr. Laura.
Thanks, Brittany.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break.